thank you for joining us for the first Rebuild Upstate webinar hosted by Upstate Venture Connect and in partnership with Rochester Beacon, as well as our media partners, the Central New York Business Journal and the Observer Dispatch from Utica. We're thrilled to have an amazing group of county executives with us, each of whom has faced probably what can be easily described as historic challenges in navigating the public health, political, and economic issues. Our focus here is really to figure out how they're dealing with things and particularly the path ahead, so that our community, the Upstate business community, the Upstate tech community, and all of the supporters that we have can find a way to move forward and create new opportunities and really rebuild our economy, which has, just like everyone else, taken a significant hit, but now thankfully is on the road to reopening. So with that, I am going to switch over to our moderator, Smriti Jacob. And Smriti is very kindly agreed to be our moderator for today. She is the managing editor of the Rochester Beacon, which is an independent, not-for-profit journalistic endeavor in partnership with other groups, and Paul Erickson, who, as executive editor, and Alex Zapisoshny as the publisher, both of whom are with us as well, but in the audience today.
Thank you for that introduction. We have with us today, as Nasser mentioned, 3 county executives who will share their thoughts on rebuilding the upstate economy. We have Monroe County Executive Adam Bello, Onondaga County Executive Ryan McMahon, and Oneida County Executive Anthony Picente. Welcome, gentlemen. I am going to, as everyone comes online, I am going to start with you, County Executive Bello, with my first question. And that is, with upstate New York in the process of reopening right now, some people think it's reopening is going to lead to a rapid recovery. Others think it's going to take some time. Based on the estimates you have now for each of your counties, and each of you will have a chance to speak, I'd like to know where you'll be by the end of this year. You can start.
Sure. So, no, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to join my colleagues here across upstate New York to talk about how COVID-19 has really impacted our local economies and what we see moving forward. And it's a little bit of a challenge because we've never done this and we've never been in this position before. And so forecasting out where we think we may be and where our economy will be in the future is going to be very difficult. The approach that we've taken here in Monroe County is to have done it with an abundance of caution while listening to health experts and into what science is telling us about the spread of the disease and how to do this safely. And we've taken that approach because at the end of the day, what we'd like to do is see the economy start again, businesses start to operating, and to be able to go through the phased-in opening plan that's been laid out by the state in a way that it doesn't then come crashing down in a few weeks or a few months because we've done it in an irresponsible or unsafe way and then have to shut things back down again and be back to where we were in the end of March and through April. And so we've taken a very deliberate approach to make sure that as we move through the phases, we engage in education around the best ways and best practices around using PPE, making sure people have masks, but also making sure that they have access to those materials. So as a good example is last Friday in our region in the Finger Lakes, barber shops and hair salons were allowed to be open again. And as part of that, one of the requirements was face shields would be necessary. And, you know, it occurred to me on Friday morning, as soon as I heard that, where in the world are thousands of hairstylists or barbers going to get face shields to be able to reopen, but they want to open quickly and they want to be able to get back to work. People want a haircut. I could use a haircut still, and we want to get back to business because folks have lost their income and are losing their livelihoods. So the county made available to those local businesses face shields. We did it very quickly, and we had over 1,500 requests very quick of individuals coming to get face shields, and then they started opening again that weekend and started getting moving again. And they were able to do it in a safe way so we can mitigate any health impacts that could have had. So I think we're very proud of those efforts to do that. We've been doing things like that all along with public mask giveaways and things like that. So we're taking that deliberative approach, making sure that supplies are necessary, and that so that, on that minimum 2 weeks between the phases, we can open. And we're doing it with a long-term thought process. If we do it right now and do things the right way, we'd be able to get to that phase 4 and keep going. So I am very optimistic that by the end of 2020, if we continue to follow the advice of health professionals, continue to make available PPE to businesses in need, stay on top of the that health advice and what's necessary, I'm very optimistic we're going to be in a much better place by the end of 2020 than we are today.
County Executive McMahon, would you like to talk about your county? Or County Executive Picente?
Okay, I'm off mute now. All right. So, yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see Adam. Adam, you do need a haircut. Please get one immediately. But the reality is this is we hear a lot about phases, but with this pandemic, you have the response, which we've been through, and that county government's led. Then you have restart, which my partner Tony Picente, you'll hear from the Central New York region and the Mohawk Valley region, actually teamed up with a restart plan before the state came out with theirs, and many of the things we worked on are incorporated in those. And all 3 of our regions are in phase 2 of restart, really going into our second week this weekend. And then what's going to be challenging is going to be recovery, and each region probably has their strengths where recovery can happen. I know each region in our counties, we all have kind of significant projects that hopefully will still continue, that will provide stimulus. But part of recovery needs to be an open and honest conversation with our state leaders about economic policy. And it's been really easy in New York when you've had unemployment at 3.5% to address many of these other issues that need to be addressed. And I think we've gotten away from good, sound economic policy that the business community can react to. Now we're going to have to have sound economic policy for retention of jobs to kind of spur innovation and then eventually job creation. So as governments, it's about finding balance. And we've all taken a data-driven approach to this pandemic to get us to the point where we're all in phase 2. And that approach will get us into phase 3 and phase 4. Economic recovery, we all have to figure out internally what role we play in a local stimulus with capital projects. What are policies at the local level that we can implement to encourage innovation? And then really to take advantage of what will be opportunities. Our young tech incubators are going to now look at opportunities to deal with pandemics and physical distancing that weren't really there before. PPE, as County Executive Bello talked about, that's a business opportunity. Somebody should be manufacturing N95 masks on the thruway. And then looking at repatriating opportunities for manufacturing. What role can local government play to have good policies? But we really need to demand our partners in state government to come up with an economic agenda. And this past budget year, very difficult. The year before, there was not really as strong of an economic agenda out of Albany, but we need to work together across party lines to really push forward with an economic agenda moving forward that can help really incentivize business, innovation, retention, and eventually creation of jobs again.
Thank you. County Executive Picente, it's your turn.
Thank you, Smriti. And thanks. It's great to join my colleagues Ryan and Adam. And yeah, Adam, I did get a haircut, so you could go.
Okay.
You can go get one now.
We tried to do it at home a few weeks ago. You know, it's just not as
Yeah,
good.
that didn't work out well for me. So thank you for having me, and again joining my colleagues. But so everybody has talked on these points, and we all agree. And what I think Adam started out with, that this is all new and different, and in a little unique position. I'm the I'm the veteran of this group a little bit, so I've been through a recession that was really more economically driven several years ago, in which we had to deal with and make adjustments. The difference here is the health aspect of it on top of the economic, and how that impacted the economic aspect. But as Ryan had said, and we worked together, the situation in upstate New York is uniquely different than downstate, what downstate did. Not saying we didn't have the numbers, and obviously we've been dealing with the tragedies of the loss of life and high numbers in terms of this virus, but it has been a lot different. It's been more facility spread in our areas rather than community spread, as it has been in New York City. So, you know, we have some unique challenges and opportunities within that to deal with going forward. And so, you know, as we look to what the rest of this year looks like as we begin our reopening, and Ryan and I talk about this, you know, constantly about what we need to do to continue to movement forward and see how we can grow our economy. The opportunity that we have is really unique, and because of what we've seen in upstate and the differences, we know that people and business may look to relocate. That presents an opportunity for us coming forward. Opening up for new business opportunities on the entrepreneurial level and on other businesses that are looking to deal with some of these issues relative to the pandemic are great opportunities for us in upstate, regionally and across, especially across these three regions. When the connection of Mohawk Valley to Central New York to Finger Lakes is really key here, and can really be a method of our coming together with an economic plan, as Ryan spoke of, looking at the opportunities that we have and what we can present in terms of quality of life, low cost of housing and land, and the amenities that we have to offer and that we can continue. So, we have our challenges in front of us. It's been a little frustrating, as I'm sure my colleagues will say, getting that direction from the state that's been slow in coming, and we have to listen and get that on the fly in many instances, and then react to it, which I think, quite frankly, and again, my region, Ryan's region, Adam's region, I think we've all done a very good job. We were among the first. I know here we were the first to close schools, to shut down senior centers, to do all the things that needed to get done. And that's why we're in the phases that we're in as regions, because we took action early on, even before cases were found here. So with that and that opportunity, I think we have really a great opportunity to look at rebuilding the economy really in a different sort of way than other economic challenges and other economic downturns. And we could do that together, and we could do that with the benefit of what our experience has been and what we have to offer. So I know that this is the unknowns are what happens in the fall, and I think we're all kind of wondering about this virus. So those are going to be the challenges, but I really think we've responded above and beyond in terms of how our regions look going through this, and hopefully coming out of it. And I got to be optimistic and say the same thing that Ryan said, that we'll be better when we get through this, and hopefully it'll be sooner than later.
You spoke of just talking about challenges. Do you think would you say that a surge in the fall is a big challenge you're looking at? What is the biggest challenge, if I can ask you, County Executive Picente, what is the biggest challenge as you look to rebuilding? Is it the disease itself and another surge, or is it jobs? What do you identify as the biggest challenge?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is really, our economic piece of handling it and what that's going to look like as we get into the fall. I know that, I share this with my colleagues, and I'm sure, the first few months of this, our sales tax, our revenues are down. So the ability for us to inject and work with the business community to grow again is limited right now in providing those services and some, whether it's incentives, but just whether it's just working with the business community to moving that forward. Now, the next couple of months are going to be even harder as we go through, even with the reopening that's taken place, to reestablish ourselves. We were on a great roll before this, at least, I think all of Upstate in particular, I can talk for my county, my region. We had the announcement of Cree building a chip fab, which is still being built. We had a Nexus Center of recreational hockey and soccer center being built in downtown. Again, that's kind of got held up. We have a new hospital being built. We have work up at Griffiths International Airport, our business park, new industry being built there. All of those were we were on a great roll, and all of a sudden this happened. So, we really have to look at, keeping that momentum going. That's the hard part here, and investing into our communities the way we have been. And the financial wherewithal is going to be difficult, especially with the unknowns from the state government, which, as Ryan and everyone alluded to, are really going to be the real test for us as we go forward. So I'll let my colleagues jump in too.
County Executive Bello, what do you have to say? What do you see as the biggest challenge for Monroe County?
Yeah, so, one of the, when I look at this, it's going to be how are local companies and organizations going to be nimble in creating new business plans to be able to survive in an uncertain future where we don't know what 4 months from now, 5 months from now is going to look like. One of my biggest concerns right now is, as my colleague just noted, sales tax receipts are down significantly, but that wasn't the case at the start of the year. In Monroe County, the first 3 months of the year, I think our sales tax receipts were around 7% higher for the first 3 months of this year than they were at the same time period of last year. So we started in a very good position, but have obviously seen a fall off. And that means obviously that people are not spending their resources. They're not buying goods. Our sales tax receipts are falling. And whether or not industries can bounce back and come back, I think in a lot of ways is still an open question. The restaurant industry has been hit very hard. The tourism industry, hotels have been hit very, very hard here. Retail establishments that still have overhead to pay, still have rent, lease costs, overhead costs to maintain their inventory has been continuing over the past several months, but they haven't been able to sell their goods at the way they used to be. People couldn't go back to work. The federal government has supplied resources through different programs. There's also the supplemental unemployment insurance benefit that has, I think, been helpful to individuals who've been out of work. But that isn't going to last forever. That's going to dry up, I think, at the end of June or July. I think it's July. And then that's where I think we're going to start to see the real impacts of what happens here when that supplemental benefit goes away. You mentioned at the start of your question, are you concerned about a second surge? Or are you concerned about things like that? That's partly that is in part why we've taken the approach we have to try to mitigate that. I do think, though, in upstate New York, there has been a lot of participation by residents in taking this seriously, which is why I think our regions have all done very well and been able to go through the phases. We've also tried, and you see these new creative approaches to things. Here in the Finger Lakes, we've worked with our hospital systems to create what we call a symptom tracker. It's called rockcovid.org is where it's located. And what the symptom tracker does is allows for real-time data collection for the healthcare systems. It's done through a consortium and public health professionals to see in real time what symptoms look like out in the community. So as you go, because right now, when you think about the spread of a disease, the incubation period takes several days, could be a week to 14 days. And then after that, then you started testing and there's always a delay. particularly then even with hospitalizations. That's always on the back end and a delay. So it's hard to have real-time data. We have over 20,000 people signed up that daily report in what their symptoms look like. The goal is 50,000. We're still growing this. Employers are reaching out to see if they can, how this would work, to see if their employees can check in on this. And this could be part of bringing people back to work, is that they do a daily symptom tracking using this tool. And then you get this aggregated data throughout the region, and we can see in real time, day to day, the public healthcare system can see where hotspots develop or where symptoms are, and we can start to develop more information so that you can continue to moving forward. You can better understand what's happening in the community. And so there's just been a lot of participation in that. But we're looking very carefully, though, right now at how, the other thing that's going to impact opening the economy is what happens with the schools, which is a whole nother conversation, because for parents who have young children who can't be home alone and need that support, it's very difficult for them to go back to work if they don't have daycare, if they don't have summer camps, if they don't have school to be able to watch their children. So that's another piece of this that is going to complicate fully opening the economy at some point if we don't have the ability to open up our schools.
Thank you. County Executive McMahon.
Yeah, I think right now, what we've learned, and now we have enough data to prove it, is that phase one actually had no impact on reopening phase one with health data. Actually, our health data has gotten better. So we believe if people continue to physical distance and wear a mask when you're going to be around people, that the virus itself is starting to weaken. Certainly, the challenges we have right now, the immediate challenges, Tony Picente talked about facility-driven cases. Nursing homes are what's driving the cases right now. So if you think about nursing homes, they are not allowing visitors. Many of the employees are testing positive asymptomatic, meaning they don't have symptoms and they're still testing positive. We don't know enough about those cases on if they can spread right now or not. But the community spread, which is the risk to the public at large, at least in our community, has been single-digit cases for the past 7 days. So it's actually better than where it was, in week 3 of this pandemic. So phase one did not impact the public health. Public health has gotten better. So our biggest challenge now is figuring out a common sense approach to get businesses up and running where we can be healthy. And kind of the phases does that to a degree now, but I think we need to be able to be pivot and be nimble to maybe move things around. I was happy yesterday, we've been urging the governor, open up outdoor seating at restaurants. They've done this in other states. They can do it safely. This is going to get people back to work. This is going to, all of our communities, one of the top 5 drivers of sales tax are restaurants. So these are all things that we got to be nimble moving forward, because the economic recovery right now is our biggest challenge. Moving into the fall, we know much more about this virus. We have testing capacity in our communities that we didn't have before when this started. We'll be working with colleges, universities, testing kids coming back to school. I'm sure that will be an element of hopefully our young people going back to elementary school and high school. But right now, we got to get businesses back going, making wages, and having the ability to sell product. And that should help our economic recovery from the government, so we don't have to put a lot of people out on the unemployment lines ourselves. But it's certainly going to help our small business people who have not qualified for PPP loans, who have not been able to qualify for unemployment. These folks need the ability to make a living, and the public health data in our region merits that ability.
Well, one of the big questions is jobs. And all 3 counties have in total lost nearly 20% of jobs. Do you see, in total, do you see the jobs in the post-pandemic recovery phase being different? Are these jobs going to come back, or are these going to be new and different jobs that we're going to be seeing or and where do you see those opportunities? I'll start with you, County Executive McMahon.
Yeah, I think our hospitality industry is going to continue to be hit probably until Q3, and then Q4, depending on what happens with the virus, could see a downturn again. So very concerned that those jobs will not come back as quickly. I think right now I'm encouraged by some federal policy being discussed about repatriating high-tech manufacturing. We can't depend on foreign countries for our pharmaceutical supplies and our supply chains and high-tech manufacturing. Think about technology, 5G, all opportunities to really bring back jobs, different types of jobs to our communities. And if you think about upstate New York, we used to be a manufacturing community all the way up and down the Erie Canal. And so the cost of living in our communities is not what it is in Texas and some of these other hot spots. So I think there's opportunities. We have higher ed, we have young ecosystems of innovation and high tech happening. Some of these big high tech names are now looking to move things over. Certainly what's happening with China and Hong Kong and Taiwan is making all these other high tech manufacturing facilities look at diversifying across the globe, Western and Eastern facilities. So this is an opportunity, if we can get good state policy and good local policy, for each of our communities to get some of these wins. And certainly glad that big projects like Tony's Cree projects going forward. We have a $3.8 million logistics facility in our community with Amazon, second largest in the world, being built. That's going to be thousands of jobs and immediate construction impact. We have a 5G manufacturer and JMA Wireless that's still moving forward. So the drone corridor between mine and Tony's communities, these things are still going. So some of our marquee investments are still happening. How do we get this going again? We have now investment sitting on the sidelines. Let's incentivize it, get that investment back here in upstate New York.
County Executive Bello.
Sorry, I was muted there. Well, you know, like County Executive McMahon, one of my concerns is with the hospitality industry. I think that is going to be the one that was probably one of the most severely hit and is going to take the longest time to fully recover once we go through this. And so that's one area of concern that we have moving forward. The convention center, all the business that is associated with the conventions that would come through there, our airport usage is way down to where it would normally be. And obviously the hotels and restaurants, things of that nature. One area of opportunity though for us, and something that we've been working very hard on, is in working with our universities. Here we have a lot of opportunity in terms of innovation and that are coming out of the two university systems, particularly the University of Rochester, Rochester Institute of Technology. And it's directly related to investments that are being made in advanced manufacturing, energy innovation, life sciences, optics, imaging, software development, IT, things of that nature. We also have a fairly robust food and beverage manufacturing economy here as well. Zweigel's is located in Rochester. Ledestri Foods are here as well. And so there are opportunities for investment and for growth. And so we've been working very hard. Just yesterday, I had a call with all of the area college presidents talking about the reopening plan, also making the distinction between reopening the universities themselves for the next semester, but also the distinction between their research labs and case of capabilities and what can happen there, because it's two slightly different, I think, functions that are taking place, and being able to manage that in a sustainable way. But I think that, you know, it's interesting. Rochester was named in our region in a book last year by Dr. John Gruber called Jumpstarting America. We were named as one of the top areas in the country for an economic resurgence because of the infrastructure that we have here, or strategically located. We strategically are looking near, I think, 19 colleges and universities. We have an incredible amount of talent that's coming out of those schools, and the opportunity to invest, like I said, in things like advanced manufacturing, things of that nature. And so those are the types of industries that I think can bounce back because we have that strong that strong infrastructure with the colleges and universities. So I'm optimistic that that will bounce back and that will continue to grow. Senator Schumer has co-sponsored legislation, the Endless Frontier Act, which would provide additional investments into those industries moving forward that I think would be very helpful, particularly to our region.
County Executive Picente.
Yeah, so yeah, I got to echo some of what my two colleagues have said. Obviously, hospitality and tourism is a big part of our region. In Central New York with Central New York Mohawk Valley, it's an over $1 billion impact in our communities because of what we have to offer, and because of that aspect that we talk about. Turning Stone Resort and Casino, which is a big part, which is in my county, which obviously employs 5,000 people. Those are a lot of jobs that people got to get back to work. And it has a tremendous economic impact throughout because of the other pieces, the attraction of tourism, the revenue source that benefits my county and Ryan's and others. That's another important. And so that's, all fits in with the economic rebuilding that goes on and is essential to business attraction and continuing the projects that we've had in place. So as we talk about the expanding our technology base, expanding the manufacturing piece that we had, the other key piece is still having those amenities and things that people want to do and need to do, and sports. Obviously, Syracuse football and Carrier Dome, and the again the amphitheater, the casino, our hockey team. All of those things are relevant as we do the rebuilding, and until those can also join the phases that we can get into reopening piece are going to have a big impact going forward. But we do know that, again, during this, I think we've been able to embrace the technology. And while obviously we're using it here and showing what can be done, I think more of that is being embraced. We know we're going to see a lot more of our industries and businesses working from home and working remotely. And that can assist in terms of building over this overall economy going forward. And we have to embrace that and look at how the technology is going to change the way we do business. I think sometimes everybody forgets, and I don't mean this in one way. I mean, my colleagues know it. We're an employer, and we've had to change the way we do business. We have 1,700 employees here. I know that Ryan has probably twice that, and Adam as well. But because of our size, but
from home.
Some are working from home, and we can do that, and we can provide services in a different way. So we've had to adjust as well. And so working, so we've had that firsthand experience as well in looking at how our businesses can adapt. And that's what makes it, a little bit, different. In past times, I always say when the economy gets bad, our businesses pick up in county government because of the services we provide. And that's a reality. When things get bad in the economy, we're the ones that have to pick up some of those pieces because more people are out of work. You mentioned the employment numbers, which are staggering, which again, going back to the economic downturn of 2010 and 9, 10, and 11, nowhere as bad as it was, no numbers as bad as we have today. So we have that in front of us as the example in working with our business community. We have that firsthand look at how are we going to do things differently, and how does technology going to play an even bigger role as we go forward? And that opportunity to bring more people up into upstate New York to do these things creates a great blueprint for us to look at of what we've gone through during this. So there have been, as much as we've suffered and as regions throughout this state and certainly the country and world have suffered, there's been lessons here. I think one of the things we've done, I know I've done with my staff, has been, okay, let's look at where's the shortcomings that been identified throughout this, and how do we help our business community react to that. And I think that's really essential going forward.
Do you see regional collaboration, working with County Executive Bello or McMahon? Do you see that as part of rebuilding? Do you expect to work together to rebuild the upstate economy?
Well, we've been, as County Executive McMahon said, we've been working together on drone development and UAS systems with the corridor between Rome and Syracuse has been a big piece that started long before this pandemic. So more of that has to take place and more of the collaboration. And as Ryan said, we work together on our reopening plan that was presented to the state that, quite frankly, and I'll say it, Ryan probably didn't want to say it, but they stole all our ideas. Ryan, you could say it. I mean, a great deal of what we've put in place, we did it first. And then the governor comes out and says, we're going to do this. The restaurant thing, Ryan started that. We started it with him a couple of weeks ago, saying you got to increase capacity. We've got to be able to get our businesses up and running. So the collaboration, and we've been doing that. We've been on calls together. Ryan and I talk more than I don't know who in terms of, I mean, sometimes my wife says, is it Ryan on the phone again? Because I'm talking to him all the time. But yeah, more of that collaboration is going to take place, and it has been, but it's even more important now as we rebuild.
County Executive McMahon, anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's really critical. And the one thing that is upstate communities on the thruway that we need to do is whenever we're going at making strategic economic investments or in certain spaces, it's better if we're not competing against each other, we're working together. And I was, for example, when Tony landed the Cree project, I was as happy for the opportunities it presents for my community for supply chain to that company now in my community, and there'll be residents from my community that will go work here. And the same thing, we're only 60 miles away from Monroe County, and their success can benefit my business community for the same purposes. So as we move forward, I think with our this regional approach to restart helps because we're working together in so many different ways. Some of the smaller counties around us, it represents great opportunities for shared services for us to really work together and help limit cost increases moving forward, maybe even reduce some costs at certain points. But from a strategy for economics, if we're communicating with each other more, we need, at some point, you need the state to come in and help out when you're targeting economic prospects. If they don't have to choose between their own communities within the state, it makes it much easier. So I look forward to continuing to work with Tony and with Adam to how we can do this and do this in a way where we all benefit from each.
County Executive Bello.
Yeah, no, I do think there's more opportunities for collaboration in upstate New York. And there really is actually, this is something we've been trying to do in the Finger Lakes region as well. One of the frustrations that I've had about government in general over the last several years is you look at everyone operates, not everyone, but, a lot of people operate in silos, and you have a lot of different groups trying to do the same things and stepping on each other's toes, and everyone wants what's theirs, and it acts as a zero-sum game. I am much more of a collaborator. Early last year, and then I was happy to join the board earlier this year, is a new initiative called Rock 2025, which is an initiative to try to bring together, the universities, the economic development agencies, the business community, government officials around the same table, so that we can collaborate. I mean, it's really easy sometimes to cooperate with each other, but to actually collaborate and try not just to think about yourself, but about the region is a different thing. And Rock 2025 was just getting started. It's an initiative that I think will bear dividends in the years to come. Obviously, the pandemic has had an impact on that. It may change the focus going forward, but it was a new type of collaboration. Our nonprofit communities are doing the same thing here. We have this systems integration effort, which was an effort to take over 100 nonprofit and community-based organizations that exist, all over, but a lot of them are stepping on each other's toes. They're doing the same thing as others. They're all trying to get the same resources, but really to the same benefit of the community. And so we created this. This predates me a couple of years ago. Assemblyman, he was a majority leader of the state assembly at the time, Joe Morelli, who's now a congressman. The city of Rochester with Mayor Warren. Here, the county. We are partnered with the United Way to try to bring everybody together in the same collaboration, and so that they're working together. And so I think those models are now being met with success. It's helped us weather the storm that we're in today. And I think that model can work in various ways across Upstate, where we do share a lot of the same. I mean, we're only an hour away. I mean, Ryan and I, our offices are probably an hour and 15 minutes away. Anthony, we're probably an hour and a half away. We're really not that far when you think about us regionally. And so we do need to start thinking about that, particularly now, because we're all facing a staggering unemployment rate and an uncertain future right now. And we can't just all be competing against each other. We have to figure out how, as Upstate New York, we're going to grow and be able to survive. And I wanted to add one other thing that Anthony had mentioned earlier about county governments, because we're facing, we have to innovate and change the way we do businesses as well. We're monitoring our revenues just like every business is, and in our operation, we're facing probably a roughly $50 million budget shortfall right now, and a budget deficit largely driven not by expenses, but largely driven by a decrease in revenues. And so we're having to change the way we do business here. And the irony of that is that the thing about county government is that we are in large part a service organization. At Monroe County, we have a $1.2 billion budget. Half of that is in social service programs and programs that really go to help people who are going to also be those folks who are the most negatively probably impacted by the downturn in the economy related to COVID-19. And so as COVID-19 has a negative impact on our economy, it's going to have a negative impact on the ability of county government to help those who are out there struggling. And so, we need help from the federal government to come. The state government can't just print money. They're facing the same budget issues that we are, and the same budget constraints. And I don't want to suggest the federal government can just print money, but the federal government needs to come in and help support local communities across the country. County governments aren't in this alone. It's the state governments, it's city governments, because we are where the rubber hits the road. My colleagues and I who are on this call are the ones who are directly in our neighborhoods, we're in our communities, helping businesses. We supplied a small business grant a couple months ago. We started a new program here to help businesses here be able to survive, and we put very broad parameters around it to be able to use on working capital. So it can be the grant funds can be used to support anything from payroll to capital expenses to rent, lease payments for their buildings. We're doing what we can. We're working with our IDA to do that and to help support them. But we really do need support from other partners in government as well.
Thank you. We are almost at time, so while I have a plethora of questions, I'm going to make it painless and let stop right now. But we have several questions that have come in through the audience, and I'm going to pick just one given the time we have, and one that's hard to ignore. Our communities have seen mass protests and unrest. Can you, each one of you, give your quick views on what our counties should be doing and how we should be working together on this, and as individuals as well? Anyone can start. County Executive Picente, do you want to go?
Sure. So clearly, we've been in some really, as I termed it when this all started, it's really no ordinary time. It goes back to some of the things that this country has dealt with, many years ago, and the time of war and other situations. The interesting thing is that and as this pandemic unfolded and everybody really came together, working hand in hand across, whether it's put the party lines aside for a minute, but really all of the communities, the governments, the entities and businesses and healthcare and first responders and all that. There was such a great sense of unity and community that is felt all the time, but then takes that extra level and bumps up. And then something like this happens in Minnesota, which you cannot, and then no one in any way, shape, or form can say that it was right under any circumstance, and then really just then sparks the outrage. So, and it takes it away from the things that we've been doing,
Sure.
Working together. Which again, you got to go back and say, all right, time out here. We're going through the worst possible time in our history in terms of this health pandemic that is killing people at alarming numbers across the world, and in particular across this country. And we have this racial unrest now that has reared its ugly head again, and come into our lives. And it's time for us to again, I hate to use the word pause because we've been in it too long, but let's stop a minute and then look at what we're doing. The protests are a part of America, and certainly that's what makes us so great. But it evolved into worse than that in some areas, and I know Adam had to deal with it, and Ryan a little bit as well, or somewhat. We were a little more lucky here. We did not have to deal with some of the unrest and peace, because I think people were starting to realize that, wait a minute, we have to look at the big picture here. So certainly, our role here is to be leaders, to look at ways in which our community can come together. And that means all aspects of it. So it's a challenging time, but I think, again, we got to look at where we've been and what we've been doing, and say, look, none of this should happen regardless. It's not happening in places like Utica, New York, or Syracuse, New York, or Rochester. And, we work together hand in hand with our law enforcement, with all of our agencies and our community. And that's where the focus has to be, especially with what we're dealing with. And, the injustice is wrong. I don't think everybody has said that, and will continue to say that. We need to continue to be the leaders as we've led in this pandemic. We need to be strong and lead in the issue of not being violent, but understanding what people's rights are, and how we can best serve them and work together.
Well said. County Executive Bello, would you like to say something on this?
What I would just add is look, I think the reaction of the community, and I can speak for what I've seen firsthand here in Rochester and across Monroe County, is there is a lot of hurt, pain, and anger that are being felt across this community related to issues surrounding systemic racism that has existed for a very long time. And we have a very segregated community here, and an economy and a community educational system that does not work for everybody. And a lot of what I campaigned on to get this job, and what I talk about, is making sure that we do everything within our power to make sure that this government and this community works for everybody, regardless of who you are, who you know, where you're from, what color is your skin, and who you love. That we need to work for everyone. And I think now we are at a moment in time where we're rethinking policies, we're rethinking the economics of things, we're rethinking policies. You have people who are demonstrating to demand change, and I think it's incumbent upon us as leaders to listen to them, to listen to the message that they're delivering, because this is our community who is talking to us, and they're demanding change. And so I think something will come out of this, and I think this is an opportunity to address systems and make systematic changes to address the needs of our community, to make sure that we're living up to that, and that we do work for everyone. I think that obviously we've seen violence over the last several weeks. We've had violence here last weekend in Rochester and Monroe County, but that is not the same thing as the protesters who were peacefully demonstrating and demanding that their government leaders listen to them. Those are two very different things in my view. And we have had a number of peaceful demonstrations. We'll have more this weekend. And I think it's incumbent upon us to listen, to learn, and to use this moment in time now to make those changes and demand those changes to make sure that this community works for everyone.
Thank you. County Executive McMahon, we are going to end with you.
Sure. Yeah. In our community, the pain has been felt with what happened with Mr. Floyd, and essentially you've had a scab ripped off on many years of racial tensions. I think what is frustrating for leaders here in communities like ours is that we've made a lot of progress on issues like this. And today's conversation is very relevant to this because this is really about opportunity with intentional opportunity for all of our residents. And diversity and inclusion needs to be intentional. And in our county, it has been. We've put policies with minority and women business procurement goals in our own local ordinances. There's a criminal justice element to this where I think there's been progress made, and the state is talking about further enhancements to that. But I think when you look at poverty, that's what we're talking about, is we need to be intentional in investments that in underserved communities. And we know where those communities are in all of our counties and in our cities. And we need to be intentional with workforce, and we need to be intentional with trying to create ecosystems and pathways out of poverty to employment. And I think that's what we're talking about with recovery here. That's what we were talking about before. And now we need to re-engage and double our efforts, even though our ability fiscally to maybe have new programs is not really there right now in 2020 or maybe even 21. But it's a commitment to diversity and inclusion in the economy, in the workforce, investing in young people when they're very young, early childhood, so that we get these kids through high school, we get them into the workforce, and that these issues are issues of the past in 10, 20 years from now.
That's a very hopeful note to end this on. Thank you very much. You've been very patient and understanding. I know how busy each one of you is. Nasser, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Smriti. And thank you, County Executives Bello, Picente, and McMahon. It's really been a pleasure to get to know you over these years and to see all the great work that you are all doing in your communities. This is the first time we've done one of these. I think we will have more get-togethers like this because there is a lot of commonality, and there are segments of the economy like higher education, healthcare, that are particularly impacted by this that will have a ripple effect in similar ways to our community. So we've had a great attendance, almost 200 people today, which was more than that we expected. And then we have had, we'll be recording this as well and sharing it with all the other folks in our networks. And we really thank you for your time. To all those who have stayed with us past the 45-minute mark, remember that UBC is a not-for-profit entity that really survives based on tax-deductible donations. So if you get a chance, please do make a contribution at ubc.org/donate. Thank you all for your time, and we look forward to the next one of these. Thank you, Smriti.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.